Thanks for coming to the harassment training. I'm going to start by a reflection. You guys have packets in front of you. Make sure you sign in. We'll be going through the packets together. But just to start the class, I'm going to read a quick reflection. So here we go. Let today be the day that I am focused on the task at hand, but committed to the overall goal. Let today be the day that I ignore the idle gossip at the water cooler and instead bring positive energy. Let today be the day that I share my ideas and create with others as a team for the betterment of our organization. Let today be the day that I offer the best of me to those who support our common goal. Let today be the day that I becomes we, and we focuses on all the good that we can achieve together as a team. Positive thinking, positive comments, dreaming, creating, sharing, and becoming a team will lift this organization past ordinary into exceptional. Let's do it together today. Okay, so like I was mentioning, this is the anti-harassment session that we offer to the CAF lab. We're going to keep it pretty informal. I have a video that I'm going to share, and then we'll go over a PowerPoint. It should be a pretty quick class. Especially since there's only 2 of us right now, or 3 of us all together. So I think that the conversation will probably be pretty quick, and we'll be out of here in maybe 30 minutes. I have some scenarios that I just want to read to you guys, and let me know your thoughts about it, okay? So I'm going to read a scenario, and then you tell me whether or not to you it seems like the scenario could be harassment or not. Sandy frequently makes personal phone calls to friends during her workday. Her conversations are usually loud and peppered with obscenities. Her coworkers can't help but overhear her conversations. Is this harassment to you guys or not?
Could be harassing, especially if you didn't like her language.
Yes, absolutely. So definitely, harassment doesn't have to be directed to a particular individual, and it really depends on if someone found that language in this scenario offensive. Okay, so then that could contribute to what we would call a hostile work environment. Okay, here's another scenario. Cindy and James have a great working relationship and recently started dating. Everything is clearly going well because they often take breaks together, go out to lunch, and can be seen flirting with each other at the printer. Is this harassment? Right, so as you can see, they get a little gray. So if it's consensual, this isn't considered harassment. Right. Cindy and James, they seem to, their relationship is consensual. Nobody's crossing the line at this point. So this is not harassment. We also don't have anything specific here at Providence that prohibits any workplace relationships within the same department. So we're okay there. However, like you mentioned, this is kind of a bit of a slippery slope, and so this could quickly turn into something that could make one or the other uncomfortable or someone uncomfortable in the department. So, while we don't have a policy that says that we can't have workplace relationships, like public displays of affection, anything like that could definitely get us to a situation where someone might perceive that as offensive, and then we could be in a harassment situation. Okay, scenario 3. Carl and Loretta are traveling together to a national trade show that they're both attending. On the plane, while they're talking, Carl reaches over to touch Loretta's hand. She strongly objects and Carl backs off. Is this harassment? Right. So, yeah.
Some people are just very touchy.
Yes. And if he picked up on that and doesn't do it again, then, I don't think that this meets the level of harassment. But if he were to continue, then this definitely could be harassment, whether it happens at work or not, because their relationship started at work. And so, the way I think about that is it could happen, they're clearly on their way to a conference, but if it persisted and he continued to make her uncomfortable, it would then make it uncomfortable when they were working together, which would then you can start thinking about a hostile work environment, and then all of a sudden you're in a situation where it could be harassment. Okay? One more. Mike, a manager, often yells at his subordinates, calling them idiots and throwing folders when he's angry. Is this harassment?
certainly
Yep.
is.
So this one is a little tricky because, and we'll go more in when we go through the training for him to be yelling and calling people idiots, and that in itself is grounds for termination for someone in a leadership position. That is not violating any of the protected classes that harassment kind of covers. So totally inappropriate, and I would argue that it is contributing to a hostile work environment, but he doesn't say anything and address any of those protected statuses. Okay, so you guys have a packet in front of you, and I just wanted to, we're gonna do the exercise on the front. It's, because there's only 3 of us here, let's not worry about that, let's just talk about it. Have you read the questions? So the questions are, what at work, oh, I clearly typed that wrong, excuse me. When at work, I find it offensive when blank. And then the next question is, these days I never know if I can blank because it may be considered harassment. So this exercise, I would like for you guys just to kind of take a moment and think about what your blanks would be.
Number 2, I have heard before, like telling an inappropriate joke. Some people can see that as harassment.
Absolutely. And that has actually happened in our department, which is, part of what sparked this training. So, yes, there have been inappropriate jokes that, the people there thought were funny, but then, there were 1 or 2 individuals that didn't like those type of jokes. What do you guys find offensive at work, if anything? I mean, is there anything that comes to mind there? That wouldn't be maybe in your personal life, but here you're like, probably shouldn't have said that here, or done that.
I'm not easily offended either,
Okay.
really, so there's some things that I wouldn't say offend me, but
The only thing I can think
careful.
of maybe is like how you approach conflict. Like, if you have a problem with someone or somebody did something that was wrong or whatever, like how you approach that person and talking about that. Not the getting angry, throwing files at them and calling them an idiot.
Right.
Whatever approach, like how to kind of like give feedback, constructive criticism in like an appropriate professional manner.
Right.
That's maybe the only thing that I can think of that kind of tutors on an offensive harassment thing.
Yeah. If they handle it in an unprofessional manner.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
they can turn it into a teaching
Yeah.
moment
Yes.
rather than just.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, and the point of this was really just for us to kind of highlight that what we may find offensive may not be offensive to somebody else or vice versa. And so we just really have to kind of bear that in mind when we're here, and jokes, things like that. We work in a really high stress area, and I know that there are times when we have to lighten the mood because but I think we have to tread very lightly in those situations and know that we're all different. And, again, the point of this exercise was to really just kind of help illustrate that and keep that in mind. So the rest of the packet is yours to keep except for this attestation. So please, when we're done with this, I have to get this back. And this is just acknowledgement of the training. And then you have a copy of the harassment policy here at Providence Everett. Our core values, which I realize I need to update because those are now different. So we actually just recently updated our mission and core values as we combined with St. Joseph Health. So I will need to get those to you guys. And then the last page is our policy against non-retaliation. If you should ever be in a situation where you felt like you were harassed or witnessed it or anything of that sort, that we do take this non-retaliation policy very seriously and want to make sure that, that we would hold people accountable.
Welcome and good morning. Can everyone hear me in the back? Good morning. Thank you for coming, everyone. I know it will be worth your while. The woman beside me, Jamie Knowles, is probably familiar to most of you. She's a harassment training expert and has spent this last week walking around and observing our workplace so she could tailor today's seminar on sexual harassment specifically to us. Everyone who works here, and anywhere else for that matter, is entitled to a harmonious, productive, and harassment-free workplace. Proper training maximizes the chance to have one. I hired Jamie to help us because without proper training about sexual harassment, we are vulnerable to lawsuits as a company and even as individuals. As president of our company, I want to minimize those risks for everyone's sake. And so, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce Jamie Knowles.
Well, thank you, Layla, for having me here today. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Now, I know that everyone is extremely busy, so believe me when I say these next 20 minutes will be well worth your while. I promise. Hi, I'm Jamie, and I'm conducting a sexual harassment seminar next for you and your colleagues. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about your thoughts and experiences?
What did you say you were doing?
Did you say you wanted to talk to me about my sexual experiences?
Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you anything too personal. And if you're uncomfortable with how it turns out, I'll delete this footage. I'm just trying to get a better sense of what you guys already know versus what you need to learn so that I can customize my seminar for your company. So what do you know about sexual harassment?
I've been around long enough to know this much. You can't say anything to anyone these days without getting in trouble. If I notice a woman's haircut or a new dress, I keep it to myself. If I compliment her, I might be offending her. How's that for ironic?
Unfortunately, I know quite a bit about sexual harassment. One of the reasons I insisted on reporting to a woman here is because I'd been through way too much with a male boss at my last company. I called him King Lear because he was always staring us girls down and making us feel uncomfortable. Well, of course, no one said anything or complained. He just kept getting promotions and raises. And then things got weirder. Gifts started showing up on desks, and he'd go to happy hour and say all these inappropriate things. I decided I had to get out, so I applied here. I heard he just left my old company. He was good at his job, but really, who wants to be around that?
What do I know about sexual harassment? What do you want to know, pretty lady? Seriously, I haven't seen too much sexual harassment. I'm a guy. But I have seen some guys in my warehouse making fun of other guys because they're gay. I don't think that's right, but it's not sexual harassment. You also hear guys talking about guy stuff, but it's not like they're hitting on anyone.
I know this isn't really sexual harassment because it happens off the premises or after hours, like during travel or a happy hour. But some of the things that take place then are unbelievable. Personally, I find it difficult to look my colleagues in the eye once I've seen them in certain compromising situations. Wait,
What about email or the internet? What if you get something at work that's R-rated or worse? Is that harassment? Because I have a friend at work who freaked out when she got this questionnaire about her very personal preferences. It was from a vendor, but still, I know she felt weird with him after that.
As you can see, your colleagues know a thing or two about sexual harassment, but there is also a lot for them to learn. There also seems to be some confusion about what constitutes illegal harassment versus inappropriate conduct and why it's all a potential landmine for problems. Now let's take a look at some interviews again.
If I notice a woman's haircut or a new dress, I keep it to myself. If I compliment her, I might be offending her. How's that for ironic?
Okay, well, is Stan right or wrong? Right. Okay, well, from the various responses I hear, you are correct, because Stan is both right and wrong. Sexual harassment is severe or pervasive behavior on the basis of one's sex or gender. Now, complimenting a colleague on his or her haircut or outfit is hardly severe or pervasive, but comments about a colleague's appearance can make someone uncomfortable. So err on the side of caution. It's not that you can't talk to anyone about anything, but you must use common sense when you're dealing with anyone you work with. The guideline I like to use is something I call the family rule. This means that if you wouldn't want someone saying something to your parent, grandparent, significant other, or child, keep it to yourself. That's how you stay in control. And speaking of control, you can learn a lot from my little friend here. I tell all of my audiences to pause before you say or do something that might be offensive. Fast forward to imagine where the tempting behavior might lead you. Rewind to the point where you almost insulted someone, and then stop. That's pause, fast forward, rewind, and stop.
I called him King Lear because he was always staring us girls down and making us feel uncomfortable. Well, of course, no one said anything or complained. He just kept getting promotions and raises. And then things got weirder. Gifts started showing up on desks, and he'd go to happy hour and say all these inappropriate things.
Now, here's a more typical sexual harassment situation. Our friend Kim was made to feel extremely uncomfortable by her old boss, King Lear. Now, there are two types of sexual harassment. The first is called quid pro quo, meaning this for that. This is when the person doing the harassing requests some sort of sexual favor as payment for a business opportunity, like a promotion, raise, trip, recommendation, etc. It's what most people think of when they hear the term sexual harassment. What Kim is describing, however, is the other kind of sexual harassment, hostile environment harassment. This occurs when someone in any job and in any rank is made to feel uncomfortable in his or her job or work environment due to another's inappropriate sexual conduct. Now, Kim left her company, but if she hadn't, she could have tried approaching her boss, talking to human resources, and/or going to another member of senior management. And if that seems too scary, it's important to know that retaliation is unlawful. Even if her boss was angry or denied what he had done, even if he had made an excuse for it, he could not treat Kim any differently than if she had not voiced a complaint. In other words, he cannot hold a grudge, single her out, hold her to higher standards, or deny her any future professional opportunities. If he mistreated her in any way, she'd have a retaliation claim in addition to a harassment one.
Seriously, I haven't seen too much sexual harassment. I'm a guy, but I have seen some guys in my warehouse making fun of other guys because they're gay. I don't think that's right, but it's not sexual harassment. You also hear guys talking about guy stuff, but it's not like they're hitting on anyone.
Same-sex harassment is as offensive and as unacceptable as any other kind of sexual harassment because it's based on the protected category of sex or gender. It's also illegal in many states, cities, and localities to harass someone simply because of his or her sexual orientation. It is not tolerated in your workplace. Think of the family rule I told you about earlier. Would you want a close family member teased about his or her sexual preferences ever, let alone at work? Of course not. Also, gender stereotyping is illegal. Calling something women's work or work requiring a strong man is also offensive and could be illegal. And how about Jose's comment that he doesn't see too much sexual harassment because he's a man? Well, I'm glad he doesn't, but harassment happens to men as well as women all the time. Anyone could harass anyone. One more thing, harassment can occur even if no one is being hit on. Sexual harassment can occur if someone makes jokes, comments, or anything that leads to a sexually charged environment.
Wait, what about email or the internet? What if you get something at work that's R-rated or worse? Is that harassment? Because I have a friend at work who freaked out when she got this questionnaire about her very personal preferences. It was from a vendor, but still, I know she felt weird with him after that.
While the development of new technologies has improved so many of our workplace systems, it has also made all companies and their employees vulnerable in new ways. The sites you search, the emails you send and receive, text messaging, instant messaging, camera phones, all of these things are vehicles for any form of harassment, including sexual harassment. Abusing them for this purpose is not only misguided, it's unlawful. What's also important to remember is that these mediums contain permanent information. Even if you delete the content, it can still be retrieved and used as evidence in a court of law, where it may be even used out of context. It happens in courtrooms across America every single day. It's important to note that in this case, Jose's colleague was offended by an off-color email from a vendor. Sexual harassment can take place between colleagues, but it can also occur between employees and folks that don't even work at your company, like vendors or customers. Even the most senior and experienced of managers don't know everything there is to know about sexual harassment. Madam President, you're up. Oh, by the way, your president did review this and has graciously allowed us to use this footage for your training today.
I know this isn't really sexual harassment because it happens off the premises or after hours, like during travel or a happy hour. But some of the things that take place then are unbelievable. Personally, I find it difficult to look my colleagues in the eye once I've seen them in certain compromising situations.
A lot of people don't know this, including your fearless leader, but harassment can and often does take place beyond office hours and or during travel, particularly when cocktails are present and significant others are not. I'm sure most of you have heard or experienced some mayhem at company parties. This behavior is as illegal as if it were taking place during regular work hours, and employees need to be particularly on guard during celebrations. These situations can be extremely uncomfortable later, both for the employee who misbehaved and for everyone else who witnessed it. And think about all of the time and money wasted on gossip and rumor control. Okay, there's one more clip we have yet to discuss.
What do you want to know, pretty lady?
Well, thanks, Jose. You made my day. But what if you hadn't? What if you had offended me? You know, your comment was neither severe nor pervasive, but it might have made me or someone else feel uncomfortable. This is a very good example of the difference between the conduct that is inappropriate and the conduct that is illegal. Calling a colleague pretty lady might not land you in court, but it is an inappropriate way to address a coworker. The bottom line is simple. Every one of you has an obligation to act professionally when interacting on behalf of and along with your company. And you are in control. Just remember, pause, fast forward, rewind, and stop. Thank you.
Definition of sexual harassment. Can you guys see that okay? Sorry, I guess the black font isn't the best up there. So, I know you guys can read all this. I'm just going to kind of try to hit these points, though, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So Title VII of the Civil Rights Act prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. So those are the protected categories that I talked about, and she also talked about in the video. Sexual harassment is a form of sex discrimination that violates Title VII. The EEOC enforces Title VII. It defines unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. When submission to or rejection of this conduct is used on a basis for employment decisions, and or when such conduct unreasonably interferes with job performance or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. And I think what she kept mentioning too in the video is severe or pervasive behavior. So that's kind of one of the things you'll see come up a lot. So we have two types of sexual harassment: quid pro quo and hostile work environment, which I've talked a lot about. Quid pro quo, I don't think is something that we see as much anymore. A lot of people are aware of this and aware that it is inappropriate and avoid this type of behavior. So this occurs when an employee's submission to or rejection of unwelcome sexual advances or conduct is used as the basis for employment decision affecting that employee. So it's kind of that, if you want a promotion, you have to go have a drink with me, or if you want a promotion, you have to do something for me. So that kind of, you do this for me and it'll get you that. And so that is one type of sexual harassment. And then the other much more encompassing, category is the hostile work environment. So this is created when unwelcome harassment is severe or pervasive enough to alter the condition of an individual's employment, or creates an abusive, intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment. So, as you can imagine, that there's a lot of behavior that can be perceived that way. And one thing that I think is important to remember is that they use a reasonable person standard when to be really careful now with this day and age with email and social media, and definitely bringing that into the workplace can really set you up for some bad situations. This talks a little more about Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature constitute sexual harassment. When this conduct explicitly or implicitly affects an individual's employment, unreasonably interferes with an individual's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. So that's just a repeat, but just want to again make sure that we're all on the same page. So harassment can occur in a variety of circumstances, definitely not limited to the following. The victim as well as the harasser may be a woman or a man. It may be amongst same sex, doesn't always have to be of opposite sexes. And the harasser can be the victim's supervisor, it can be a vendor that comes in, it can be a supervisor from another area, a colleague from another area, anyone. Or a non-employee, so it can be a guest here, patient, family member, vendor like I mentioned. And the victim does not have to be the person that is quote-unquote harassed. So somebody who is overhearing or witnessing the situation can still be considered the victim in this situation. The harasser's conduct must be unwelcome, and Providence has a zero tolerance policy on this. And again, in your packet you have a copy of that. Some more examples of conduct that we prohibit here: jokes, slurs, negative stereotyping, threatening, intimidating, or hostile acts that relate to sex, sexual orientation, or any protected class. Written or graphic material displayed or circulated in our workplace that is demeaning or shows hostility or any aversion towards the individual or group because of sex, sexual orientation, or any other protected class. So again, that's religion, race, ethnicity, gender. So what can we do to ensure that we don't have issues with this in our department? I mentioned before we have had issues in the past. So ensuring that everybody goes through this training is one thing that we just make sure everybody knows what is expected of one another, and really kind of help set that tone. You have a copy of our core values, and that really should help navigate us as we're here throughout the day, taking care of our patients, and just remember that our mission and core values really need to help drive us. And it's all about respect. She mentioned in the video, and I thought this was a nice way to kind of frame it, if it's something that you wouldn't want someone to say to your child, to your spouse, to your grandparent, to your auntie, to someone that you truly care deeply about, then you probably should refrain from saying it, or think twice about how you're going to word something, because it definitely could offend someone. So, what to do when you have a concern, if you have a concern. So, definitely if you are the victim of harassment, or if you are witness to harassment, please inform the harasser. If you are able to, if you feel comfortable, if you feel safe to do so, then please let them know that what was said was unwelcomed or offensive in any manner. We have the ability to file an integrity report here at Providence. That's available through the intranet. It's anonymous. I think you can make it anonymous, or you could choose to put your name, but just know that when you fill that out, you are protected. It's sent, it goes to our compliance department, and then they protect the person who fills it out. So you can do that. And then always you can come to me, you can come to Jamie, you can come to anyone on the leadership team, and discuss your concerns. I would want to know about them. You know, you also, if you don't feel comfortable coming to one of us, Human Resources, you have the ability to reach out directly to them as well. So there are lots of different avenues if you are the victim or witness any of this type of behavior. And then again, I want to drive home that we do feel really strongly about non-retaliation here at Providence. And so again, you have a copy of that policy there, but we would protect, of course, and make sure that that doesn't happen. But the other thing I would ask is that if you do witness it, or are in a situation like that, that you really try to keep it confidential. You know, I think that it needs to be shared with, you know, the leadership team and escalated as appropriate, but I think going and chit-chatting with everybody in the department doesn't really help address the solution, especially if you are someone who witnessed someone being harassed. Spreading that around might cause further harm to that person who is the victim. And then if you were to launch an investigation, some things that you can expect. So it depends on kind of the severity of the situation. The rule of thumb that HR uses is if they feel that, let's say it's a large enough scale that it would take greater than 5 hours of interviews and investigation and, you know, figuring out from an HR perspective, then they are able to bring some resources from Renton to help with the investigation, and so that has happened in our department. And so, you know, HR has some resources that they can pull from that come up here and conduct a formal investigation. If it's something that they think would require less than 5 hours, is kind of that gauge that they use, then our HR liaison would come in and work with the leadership team and work with, you know, the individuals involved and do an investigation and help fix the situation. Okay, so that's kind of what to expect. But again, non-retaliation. So please, if you see something like this, don't hesitate to bring it forward. You know, just because maybe it's something that has been accepted for years, hopefully we're not in a situation like that, doesn't mean that it still can't be brought to light and addressed and fixed. So we don't want to let those bad behaviors continue. A little more about the investigation. Caregivers will be treated with respect and confidentially allowed within the realm of the investigation and follow-up. We support an environment free from harassment, no retaliation per the policy, and there will be an investigation if appropriate. Okay, last little part. I'm gonna test your knowledge and then we will be done. Okay. True or false? To file a sexual harassment claim, the victim does not need to show that he or she suffered monetary or economic harm, such as being fired or demoted.
True.
True. Perfect. Unwelcome sexual conduct that interferes with a person's ability to work or that creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment can constitute sexual harassment.
True.
Well, no, I was.
Oh.
I was adding to that. You guys are absolutely right. Okay, number 2, true or false? An employee who joins in with sex jokes or sexual banter in the workplace may be a victim of sexual harassment.
That joins
They're telling
into
the
participating with telling the jokes.
True.
Who joins in with sex jokes or sexual banter.
They're the victim.
Yeah, would they be the victim or not? True or
No.
false?
No, that's
False.
probably false.
So this one's tricky. Yeah, it is true. Although an employee's participation may indicate welcomeness, it does not automatically follow that the employee was asking to be sexually harassed. So that is kind of a tricky one. Okay, true or false? It is not harassment for a subordinate employee to make unwanted sexual advances towards his or her boss. I feel like there was a couple double negatives in there. You want me to read that one again?
Read that again.
It is not harassment for a subordinate employee to make unwanted sexual advances towards his or her boss.
False. False.
Yep, anyone in the organization can be liable for harassing another member of the organization. So whether, against another employee, against your one-up, against one of your direct reports, that does not matter. Okay? Okay, that is all I have. Do you guys have any questions about that?
No, I do not personally
I
have
do
any
not
questions.
have any questions about this.
All right. Thank you. Don't forget to get me your attestation.
They're right
Perfect.
there.
Great. Thank you.